Hi, and welcome to SPN Circular Economy Conference. Our speakers will be covering many aspects of circular economy, which we believe you will find extremely informative. Their contact details will be found on our website if you have any further questions for them. So, to start our conference, we have Tom Szaky, CEO of TerraCycle, who will be speaking about a circular reuse platform called Loop, which enables consumers to purchase products in durable and reusable packaging.
We're very fortunate to have with us today Tom Szaky, the CEO of TerraCycle, who's going to talk in detail about the circular economy. And the first up, we're going to look at the role of recycling in closing the circular economy. So, Tom, there's a common misconception that certain kinds of products and packaging aren't recycled because they can't be. Could you explain the reality and why it's important that people understand that recycling is actually a business?
It's a very, very good question. I think this is a great framing for the entire concept of recycling, which is really honestly, the first step in moving our current system into a circular economy. So while we look at alternative methods of filling, like reuse or other things, recycling really is the pragmatic step that we have to do at scale that is in front of us as society today. And typically, if you look at consumers, like citizens, the perception, I believe, is that recyclers are out there recycling what they can recycle, almost like a public service, like healthcare or education, and doing what is right, and then, funding that in perhaps taxes or some method of such. That's really the citizen perception. The corporate perception, if I think about brands and retailers, I would distill it to be, it's about the technical capability to recycle an object, like the R&D of the object. Is it possible to recycle it? And then is there available infrastructure to carry out that technical process? And I would argue that the real thing we have to focus on is neither of those assumptions, which is to say that, recycling are for-profit businesses, Veolia or Waste Management. These large organizations are for-profit companies whose mode or entire goal is to serve profit to shareholders. And so what really gets recycled is not what is technically recyclable, which is, mind you, just about everything, but what is profitable to recycle. And a good way to look at this metaphor is, let's say you and I ran a junk company, and we had a truck and we were running around, doing junk services. And let's say we went to an estate where maybe someone had passed away and the heirs are asking us to clean out, the estate. There's a bunch of stuff that, we think is garbage. We put it in our truck, but then we run into a Steinway piano. We would probably look at each other and say, you know what? We're not going to throw that out. We're going to take it and sell it, right? It is about extracting value from our waste. And if the cost of collection and processing is lower than the resulting value, we're going to extract it as waste management companies and go sell it. Now, the value can be subsidized through EPR, or the volume, this extended product responsibility, which is a form of tax, if you will, or the volume can be grown through DRS, deposit return schemes. But net, that is the everything to look at. If you then take that sort of mode and take a step back, what you realize is also there's been a lot of headwind, which is why recycling has been struggling over the past 10 years. It's low oil prices have suppressed end market values for polymers. The end markets themselves have been much harder to access. China and many other countries stopped the importation of waste. And then also the quality of our waste, vis-a-vis how profitable it is for recyclers to bother recycling, is diminishing, because the entire goal of the packaging industry is to remove value, remove cost, right? Make things lighter, thinner, from cheaper materials. And that is wonderful because it reduces cost, even reduces the need of materials. But then as a recycler, you look at this stuff and you say, well, there's even less value in it than there was before. So why bother, sorting it, collecting it, processing it, and so on and so forth. And I think if we hone on this central question that recycling is all about, or what will be recycled is not about technical or infrastructure. It has to do with, can a garbage company make money? I think it really helps clarify the interventions we need to do and what we have to think about consistently.
So how do the recyclers make money from that then? Because obviously what you're saying, I completely agree with, but how, like the whole process, how does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you simplify the recycler's business equation, you have the economics of collection, you have the economics of conversion or processing, turning the waste into a sellable form, and then you have what you sell that material for. So let's just do a quick double click on each of those. Collection. In collection, you have the cost of physically getting the waste from the point of origin, like a consumer's home, sending a truck, picking it up. You have to take it to a facility, typically a MRF, a sorting center, and then you have to sort it into fractions that can be sold. In some cases, you get paid to do that, so there may be some revenue there, but nevertheless, you have that entire burden of getting the waste from the consumer to a sorting center and sorted. Then the second part is processing. Now, typically, the recycler itself or the collector may not be the processor. They may then sell it to a processor or move it to a processor, but then the processor, whether it's the same company or a different company, takes that sorted material and shreds it, melts it, in some way processes it into what one would call like a new material or a material that a manufacturer can use. And that's the output that is then sold to a manufacturer who purchases it and then makes products using some percentage of recycled content. Now, so if we zoom out of that equation, there is revenue in the material sale, there is cost in the processing, and there's cost in the collection and sortation. And so that is the simplified business model, collection and processing versus value. Now, value is really subject to commodity prices, right? So oil, for example, has been low over the past 5 years, and oil is what plastic is made from. So when oil goes down, virgin plastic prices go down, and as such, the price that you can sell recycled plastics go down. So value is really subject to the commodity fluctuations, if you will. And so this is where the equation is sensitive, right? When oil prices go down, less things become recyclable because they become less profitable to bother recycling them. And there's relatively little input or revenue inputs because you really just have the value of the material and maybe some subsidy through taxes or some subsidy through the municipality funding collection, which is many times why wealthier municipalities have recycling because they pay for it, and less wealthy municipalities do not. Jacksonville, Florida, just last week, canceled recycling due to budget concerns.
Seems that recycling rates have been stagnant for a long time now over the past few years, and the recycling business has been challenging, to say the least. Yes. So does recycling still actually matter?
It does, absolutely. Just because it's challenged doesn't, and the business construct is challenged, does not make it less or more important, frankly. It just means we have to help recyclers greatly to do this very important work, because it's critical, because today we live in an ostensibly disposable economy. We buy things, we use them for very short periods of time, and we dispose them. And so the most important thing in front of us in the immediate term, like what do we do tomorrow, is how do we collect this disposable stuff and make sure that we honor the materials they're made from so that we can make more stuff from them instead of extracting things from the earth. Because the number one environmental pressure we have in our entire sort of commerce environment is the act of extraction. Like if you look at LCA's, life cycle analyses, it's always the farming, the mining, the extraction that is the majority of the impact on our planet. And if we dispose materials, either through landfilling or incinerating them, then we have to extract again. If we honor the materials by recycling them, then we reduce the need for extraction, which is why life cycle analyses show that recycling is typically 50 to 75% better for the environment from a carbon point of view than it's say landfill or incineration, destruction outputs, right? Linear outputs. Now, so it's critically important. There's this, sort of misconception, if you will, and I think, that recyclers and waste management companies are somehow morally, obligated to like do the right thing with the waste, right? Like that, and I think sort of, we feel that, but they're not, right? They are there to serve their shareholders and make money. So they're really only going to collect and sort what they can make money at. And this is so important that we understand that we have to feed the garbage stream what recyclers want, not be like, hey, recycler, why aren't you recycling this object? Which they had no opinion on when it was created, right? So here's a good example. In the UK, Tesco famously banned just a year or two ago the ability to sell biodegradable packaging in their stores. They have banned it full out, right? Very brave and did it very publicly. Other companies have done similar things, but very privately and quietly. But Tesco, to their credit, did it loudly. So then the question is, why? And this goes to the same fundamental question is, biodegradable packaging is absolutely true. It will biodegrade, right? It is exactly as advertised in the right settings. Industrial composting for industrially biodegradable, or home, if it's home, absolutely will do. There's no manipulation there. But composters in the UK don't want it. So if it's in, if they receive it in their feedstock, they will sort it out and burn it. Yep. And why they do that is because it harms their business equation and doesn't help it. And this is the everything that we have to think about is, it's not that the waste management industry is responsible to recycle everything we produce, is that we have to incentivize and make it profitable for them to bother doing it. And we can do that by what we feed the waste, higher quality, valuable materials, or we can subsidize it, but we have to somehow create the money flows.
So going on from that, what is the role of recycling in the circular economy?
Yeah, I think if you think about the first step from linear to circular, linear is like take, make, waste, right? The first step of turning a linear system, because it's not just about inventing new systems, right? It's really about converting current systems from linear to be progressively more circular. And so in a take, make, waste system, the most important thing is that when the object becomes waste, that instead of it being destroyed, that the material can be recovered, and that's exactly what recycling is. That's why it is ostensibly not a perfect solution, but the most important solution to scale today, no question. From there, we then need to go one step further and think about how do we make sure that the companies are also a market for recycled content, not just making sure the object is recyclable, but that they're pulling and demanding recycled content to make their products. And then when we have that going, that is a circular economy based on recycling, we need to challenge ourselves on how to tighten that circle and have fewer steps and less impact, which would be perhaps moving from disposable systems to reusable. And then it's important to keep the white elephant in the room, of course, which is none of this is the answer to fundamental sustainability. The actual question we have to think about is then how do we modulate down our volume of consumption? Because we shouldn't be mistaken that circular economy is not intrinsic sustainability. Circular economy just means that we are not producing waste and we are allowing the material to go around and around. But having any material go around, whether through recycling or through reuse or new models, is some level of impact. And so we also have to really think about how do we modulate our net impact downward by buying less. That is so important we don't lose sight of that, because we can't circular economy our way into full sustainability where we're in balance with the world.
Fantastic, thanks. If we move more, Tom, onto the role of recycled content within closing the circular economy. So if we move from the process of recycling to the materials it actually produces, what is the role of recycled content in closing the circular economy?
We talked just earlier about this concept of is the object one makes recyclable, right? And that has to do with what we've already discussed. But what happens with that recycled material? And today in recycling, most of it would be what experts would call downcycling, right? It goes from a high quality material to a lower quality output. Pragmatically, that would be like turning a shopping bag that maybe we drop off at our local supermarket into plastic lumber, which is where it goes. Now, that is recycling. It's really important. It's really good. But you're moving from a high grade material to a high grade application to a lower grade application. Now, please note, many times the word downcycling has super bad branding to it. Down, it feels negative and so on. So people many times like to sort of, degrade it and say that it's not really recycling. But let's be clear. It is most of what recycling is. And all materials degrade to some degree. Paper is a wonderful example. Paper can go basically through 7 cycles, right? Because what happens every time you recycle it, the fiber length shortens. And so you can go from bright white paper to maybe corrugate, to maybe newspaper, to maybe toilet paper. And what happens is the fiber length keeps diminishing, and at some point you can't form paper again. Paper would have about 7 cycles capable. Plastics, maybe 15 to 30, glass much more, alloys much more, but it always is somehow going in a downward direction. And so what is so important is that the companies that especially are producing high grade outputs are pulling material, right? And really focusing on how do we keep it at the highest grade application for as long as possible. And that has to do with demanding recycled content. Now, there is a white elephant in the room here, right? As in many of these topics, right? Which is that in recycled content, everyone out there has made these incredible pledges that are due in 2025, right? I mean, that's 3 years from now. And by the way, massive headwind to the recycling industry during this whole time, low oil prices, things we already talked about, and markets and whatnot. The total amount of demand that is stated for a material type like PET, like a soda bottle, substrate, is 10 times the available supply today. And the supply is not dramatically increasing. And the reason there's this huge delta between demand or stated demand and supply is because we are all hunting or all the manufacturers are hunting for the same material, which is recycled content that behaves characteristically in price and performance like virgin content. Mm-hmm. So, and this is because we design our products from a virgin mentality. Right? What that sort of means, if I'm making a shampoo bottle for a company, I'm going to figure out how to make the coolest, most amazing shampoo bottle from virgin plastic, because that's how every designer does it, and think about the characteristics, like how thick it can be, how well it can squeeze, what the price is. And then my company wakes up, as many have, wonderfully, and says, now I need to make that same shampoo bottle from recycled material. Well, I already have my molds, my run times, and all this stuff. So I'm now going to look for recycled content that I can plug and play into the mold that I made, thinking of what virgin plastics can do. And what that restricts me to, say in the world of PET, is soda bottles and water bottles only, because those are clear, those are food grade, and those are collected, through councils and municipalities, which means that they have a favorable price. But I'm not touching all the other stuff out there, like not even close. So if I'm a shampoo bottle manufacturer and I'm using 100% PCR, post-consumer recycled content, I'm using beverage bottles. I'm not using shampoo bottles to do that. And the same if I'm making a backpack out of PET or a carpet or you name it. And so what we really have to think about as we demand recycled content, back to your original question here, is we need to not just say, give me PCR that is equivalent to virgin, which is what we're doing today, but how do we design products and packages into the undesirable materials? And that is amazing, because then a broader demand spectrum would appear for recyclers, and that would increase the amount of stuff that they can sell, which of course goes back to the very first point, which is it improves their business equation.
Following on from what you're saying with the PCR and the products, are enough producers meeting commitments that they've made to include more PCR in their products? It's
a very good question. And I would say first, the positive. It's incredible the amount of leaning in and commitments producers have made. And I really believe these are authentic commitments, like they really intend to do them. And this is not just, window dressing. And it's really important to honor that intention. With that said, it's going to be very challenging for all the producers to meet their commitments, simply because if everyone is focused on pulling the same material, it doesn't matter, even if recycling improves, which is it's more stagnating, there's simply not enough to do it. So it's not possible in today's construct for all the producers to meet their commitments. And we're already seeing this from the major producers, that they're struggling greatly getting their hands on the materials, right? They have to start thinking about doing procurement in the way they never have before, which is buying futures, locking up supply chains for a long time. Now, the producers that do that and change their procurement practices and really buy into the future, they will lock it up. And then everyone else is going to wake up in a world where there's no availability. And then you have to start thinking about what happens with counterfeit recycled content, because how do you actually even tell if that material you ordered is recycled, post-consumer or pre-consumer, or recycled at all? And again, the big unlock is, let's say, personal care company needs to be using personal care waste to make their products, not beverage waste. Backpack companies or t-shirt companies who make, rPET fabric need to be using textile waste to make those products, right? It would be, then it could balance, but that's not happening right now. It's all pointing towards the beverage industry being the input for everyone's recycled material. And so it can't possibly get the volumes that are needed.
So that being said, Tom, are there any other materials out there with the same properties as PCR which could be used instead?
So yes, right? But the characteristics and the economics, so characteristics being like material characteristics, like what color comes out at the end, what can it be made into, and so on, are different and require very different and I think courageous design, right? Like it's not going to be, at the beginning, it's going to be like, gosh, I have to make this wonderful gourmet, meal out of slop, right? Like that's how it's going to feel, and it's going to be more expensive, right? Like here's a good example. Take, clothing, right? Today, the majority, I think it's around 60% of the clothing in the world are hybrids, right? Polymers hybridized with natural materials. Like a stretchy t-shirt is some cotton and like, let's say nylons or some other form of, material. Now, could you, get, say, recycled nylon, right? You can, but you have to start with a pure nylon source. But then that t-shirt, when it hits its end of life, is not deconstructed back into a new t-shirt. You see the issue, right? That means that the apparel industry cannot be its own recycled input source. They have to pull from other industries. And as long as this happens, you get a fundamental imbalance.
TerraCycle has also become known as a leader in the reuse movement. So could you tell us a bit about Loop?
I say this as a recycling company where TerraCycle's first two major divisions are collection and recycling, typically of hard to recycle materials like everything from cosmetics to diapers, and helping companies integrate recycled content into their products, what we've been sort of chatting about now. Now that gets us to a circular economy based on recycling. That's a relatively big loop. And there are some of the challenges I described vis-a-vis downcycling or the material moving through industries, but not staying necessarily in the same loop. So if you looked at a recycling loop in a two-dimensional form, it would look like a circle. But I would argue that you would want to actually rotate it on the third axis into a third dimension, and then it looks like a corkscrew, right? In other words, as it goes around, it doesn't go back into itself. Like it starts here, it goes around, and it's here now. Then it goes around, and it's here now. And that's what we mean about this sort of moving through industries or downcycling or whatever a synonym we may want to put against it. So we thought a lot about, well, that clearly is not the fundamental answer to waste, right? It's what has to scale today, no question. But it's not the fundamental answer. And that sort of led us to, well, what is the root cause of waste? And we landed on the hypothesis that it's the concept of a throwaway culture, disposability, single use, this sort of thing. And this is a new concept, right? It's so important to honor that it's only around since the 1950s. There's people, who are, let's say, our grandparents, who lived in a world or born in a world where we cobbled our shoes, mended our clothes, bought milk from the proverbial milkman, and lived in a world where we valued these things and they kept getting reset, repaired, refreshed, cleaned, those sort of things. And we didn't really have waste in the way we have it today. I mean, really, if you look at waste, it's a 1950s invention and it's exploded since then. Okay, so if disposability or single use is the issue, then we did a lot of research and wondering, well, what does the reuse movement really need? Right, because there's wonderful companies that are coming up with refill stations, and you get a bottle at home, and then you get concentrate and you fill it. Right, there's lots of that happening. So another one of those, I'm not sure is going to really create a fundamental shift. But what we realized is that in the world of reuse, there's a challenge right now, which is that all the ways you can experience reuse are what one would call mono supply chains. Here in the U.S., my propane tank for my barbecue is reusable. Right, it doesn't get thrown out; it just gets refilled with propane. A beer keg that I may also buy for my barbecue is reusable. It'll be a wonderful barbecue, mind you, is reusable. It's steel, it's great, it just gets cleaned and filled up with new beer. But when those two objects are empty, I can't take the propane tank to the beer store, and I can't take the beer keg to the propane tank place. I have to stay in my lane. Yep. Just like refill stations are, once I buy a bottle, I have to go back to that store, refill it with that brand's content, right? They're very what one would call mono supply chains, which makes them inherently unscalable. If you wanted to live your life with thousands of products, right? Because how can you remember where thousands of products, have to go? And it's what's beautiful. I think we can, we can vilify disposability a lot, but it did win, right? We vote for it every day. So let's honor why do we vote for it? And I'd argue it's because it's epically convenient and it's cheap. Mm-hmm. And these are important virtues to honor if we're going to somehow beat disposability and shift people, because those virtues have to be met. And so what Loop is all about is trying to be a platform for reuse, where any brand can enter and create a reusable version of their product. And then any retailer, whether it's McDonald's or Tesco, can sell those products, whatever is, of course, appropriate to their consumers. And then most importantly, a consumer can buy anywhere and return anywhere. So today you can go to a Tesco in the UK and select stores and buy, say, your Persil laundry detergent in a reusable package, filled, ready to go, have a completely disposable experience. When it's empty, just chuck it, but chuck it back into a Loop ecosystem or a reuse bin and throw it not back at a Tesco, but maybe at a McDonald's, right? Because today your recycling bin doesn't really care where you purchased the product. It just cares it's recyclable. But it's not going to say, oh, you bought it at Asda and this is a Tesco only, recycling bin, right? There's no way that would work. And so that's what Loop is really trying to achieve, is to be that platform that sort of allows all these reusable systems to work interconnectedly and to make it really easy to scale, because we believe, in what we've learned, in 3 years of now doing this, is convenience is everything. It's a gate. If you are not convenient, you don't even get to tell the consumer about what the features and benefits are and at what price. Right. So how people always ask this proverbial question in sustainability, like, will someone pay more for an organic, product? Yeah, all time. I think it's an incorrect question, because I would first say, is the convenience of buying that product equal or better than the alternative? If it is, I go to the next question, which is, what are the features and benefits? And then I ask, are those reasonably priced? And that's what we have to really win on in reuse to allow it to compete with disposability and start taking share.
So are there any factors which would influence companies not to use these reuse methods?
Yes, there is a big issue in any new system coming out. What is a consumer comparing a reusable product to? So let's take that Persil bottle, right? If you're going to walk into Tesco, you can buy Persil in a disposable package. at a certain price, and now you can buy it in a reusable one. It's the same juice inside. Now, maybe you'd argue the reusable package is more eco-friendly. That's a plus. Maybe it's more beautiful. It's now stainless steel. I'd argue it's actually gorgeous and wonderful, right? So those are pluses. But you're going to pay only so much more for that, right? And in Tesco, they've even done a thing where it's going to be the same price. It's a reuse price guarantee. Now, the disposable pack is like an Olympic athlete as it comes to efficiency, right? It's honed, it's big mass production. It's as cheap as you can make that object appear. Reuse is low scale. And low scale comes with high cost. And so you have there, that means that the brands, the retailer, Loop itself has to invest huge amounts of money to be able to render it today to the consumer at a low price. Now, volume is the solution to all of that, right? As volume comes, the prices collapse, and reuse can become price competitive to disposability, evidenced by it is the beverage industry in Germany. It is the beer industry in Canada, right? So at scale, it's not a hypothesis, it does get competitive, but you got to get to the scale. And how do you get to the scale is retailers leaning in and putting this in their stores, brands leaning in and putting products on the shelf, and not saying, well, I like it, I want to join, but call me when you're at scale, because then you never get there. And that's the big dance that Loop is playing, with the brands and the retailers, is making sure we can get enough folks who believe and lean in and help effectively finance the ability to get to scale, at which point everything normalizes, everyone can make money, and it can really head-to-head compete with disposability. And frankly, it's exactly the same journey the organic food movement did. I mean, Loop's closest proxy is the concept of organic, right? Because organic went around, convinced people to farm differently, which at the beginning was extremely expensive and cumbersome. And then retailers created organic sections in their stores. That's how it began. It's exactly the same thing with Loop. And then as scale came down, the cost of organic went down. And there's now some retailers who only sell organic goods, right? And it tipped over. But that's sort of the closest idea of what Loop is trying to achieve.
Now, are there any industries where it's harder to reuse packaging?
It's so interesting. I would frame it differently, if I may. It's not that it's harder or easier. What I found with consumer product companies, and we work with all of them, right? From motor oil to perfume to beverage food in Loop. It's less so about can it be done. It's more so how much intrinsic comfort they have with it. So what I mean by that is take a company like Nestle, right? They already do reusable beverage containers with their water business in some countries. So there's an organization that it gets it. What does that mean is that it makes it more confident for their baby food division, their pet division, to feel confident that they can get there, because internally they can call up internal stakeholders and be like, how do you do Perrier reusable in let's say Germany? And they go, exactly, here's how it works, here's what's, and then they get all the confidence. Then you move over to, let's say, a company that is new to reuse, like Procter & Gamble, right? They have no business units today that are in reusable and no history of it either, right? So either you have to have a history on it, like many of the beverage players, or active business to create that internal comfort and internal sort of know-how. But if you don't, then it's going to seem much more foreign. And it just takes longer to get folks across the finish line, right? And it's not just, what does the pack look like? How do you fill it? How do you look at the health and safety? How do you look at the economics, right? There's all the stakeholders have to be brought along. And so that's the real difference we see in consumer product companies is, in the end, look, we're putting stuff in a bottle. It's not landing someone on the moon, right? And so it's very doable. But the question is this, how lubricated is the process? And that is entirely connected to historical comfort or active comfort.
Fantastic. One final question, Tom.
Yeah.
What would you say are the biggest barriers to shifting away from a linear disposable supply chain and into a more revolutionary circular one? What are the biggest hurdles to overcome?
Convenience and inertia are the two that come immediately to my mind. So convenience is not just convenience to the consumer, right? And that has to be put on a pedestal and honored and really aimed towards. And to me, in reuse, that would be, or even just recycling, make it easy. Make it ideally as easy as throwing it in the rubbish, right? That's to the consumer. But it also has to be easy to the other stakeholders, which are the brands and the retailers. I give you an example in Loop. One of the virtues of Loop has been we've tried to do that with the brands and the retailers, and it's why it's been easier for retailers to scale. I mean, that's what they've told us is if you walk into a Carrefour or a Tesco and you see the Loop section, it looks normal. It's just stuff in a package, just the package is different, which means if they want to add more stores, their supply chains are already set to handle that very well. If they were trying to scale, let's say, another method of reuse, refill stations, they'd have to implement this whole new concept of infrastructure. Run power all over the place, put in these more, a whole different method of thinking where you have to train your staff, do things differently, manage inventory differently. You can imagine all the different details. So that makes it inconvenient to the process. And convenience is so important because it solves inertia, right? In the end, everyone would prefer to make life easy and just do tomorrow what we do today. That's not a malicious thing. Right? It's not about, well, I don't want to be better. It's entirely linked to, I want it easy, right?
Yeah, of course.
And companies want it easy. People want it easy. Everyone loves convenience. And so when you ask for change, it's the proverbial shifting a cruise ship, or a big tanker going in a different direction. It's not about how do you make the shift? How do you do your song and dance to get the shift to occur? But how do you make the actual turning the boat as little as possible while creating the biggest net effect? That's actually so it's not about how do we turn the big boat fast. It does not turn fast. It's about how do you turn it 1 degree, but accomplish a huge difference.
Yeah.
Right? That is actually the secret sauce to this, then somehow some magic on how do you get the boat to suddenly go 90 degrees in the opposite direction. It just won't. It just will not happen. And so there, again, I think the thing is, it's not about behavior change, right? Many times in sustainability, we talk about we have to have whole new behaviors. That's incredibly difficult. That's turning it, 180 degrees, right? Whether a consumer or whatever, or a whole new method of filling and distributing. Those are monster changes. I would argue, how do we make it feel disposable while acting reusable?
Well, Tom, thank you so much for your time today.
No, it's my pleasure.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Have a
thank
lovely
you so
day, Tom.
much for your
Thank
time.
you.
It's been brilliant and very informative. Thank you.
Absolutely.
A great video from Tom. We were very lucky to have him on board. Our next speaker is Nerida Kelton, who is the Executive Director of Australian Institute of Packaging. Nerida will be speaking about circular design and refill, which will cover topics on the goals which the World Packaging Organisation have set themselves to reduce food and packaging waste.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're dialing in from around the world. And on behalf of the World Packaging Organisation, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the organisers for inviting myself here today to talk to you about refillable packaging and looking towards a refillable future for packaging. So where do we start? So we need to rethink, redesign, reduce, reuse, and recycle packaging. And what we're finding is that consumers are demanding retailers and brands reduce their use of unnecessary packaging, particularly problematic materials and single-use packaging. And there's a significant shift that everyone would be seeing all the way around the world, where reusable and refillable programs are being trialled. And there are some fantastic examples that are innovative and intuitive that we can all learn from. So where did refillable and reusable packaging start? Well, some would say it started many, many decades ago, and it's been revived. So I think back to when I was a child, and I used to get really excited with my sisters because we had a milkman that delivered our milk, and every week he'd come back, he'd refill the milk, and we'd get fresh milk for the next week. Now, obviously, there are new variations of that now, but when you look at what the Ellen MacArthur Foundation did when they developed their new plastics economy initiative, it reintroduced the whole concept of reuse models and trying to help businesses understand that this is a potential opportunity to lower their environmental impacts. And the Ellen MacArthur Foundation identified through this initiative that the converting of 20% of global plastic packaging into reuse models offers a $10 billion business opportunity. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation identified 6 ways that reuse can bring significant benefits to both users and businesses. And that's through 1, cutting costs, 2, adapting to individual needs, 3, optimizing operations, 4, building brand loyalty, 5, improving user experience, and 6, gathering intelligence. And they developed 4 reuse models that help to deliver superior user experience, and that's refill at home, return from home, refill on the go, and return on the go. And refill at home is when users refill their reusable containers at home. And that's like when refills are delivered through a subscription service. And this works really well for e-commerce. And then the next one is refill on the go. And this is when users refill their reusable container away from home. And that is in the concept of the in-store dispensing system. This model does require physical stores or dispensing points, which makes this really well suited to retail outlets and urban environments. Then we have return from home. And this model is when packaging is picked up from home by a pickup service. And this is suited again to e-commerce. And then we have the fourth model, which is return on the go. And this is when users return the packaging at a store or a drop-off point, for example, in a return machine, like a deposit return machine. And this is a wonderful opportunity to reduce and eliminate single-use packaging without really changing the fundamental purchase situation. Now, the refillable and reuse models do have challenges, and there needs to be considerations such as materials need to be sustainable, recoverable, recyclable. Materials need to withstand multiple uses, and that's really, really important. So that means they have to be durable and withstand a use over and over and over again. Life cycle assessments are required, so we encourage you to undertake LCA mapping, incorporate tools when you're moving from one material to the other, just to make sure that you have a lower environmental impact with the materials that you're shifting to. You also need to consider assessment of final disposal of the pack, and hygiene and safety, which is really, really important. And that's the hygiene and safety of the food products or the products within the packaging. And then also obviously the safety of the people that are consuming the ingredients. And then cleaning protocols. The other challenges that need to be considered is that the programs need to be intuitive and innovative. And some of the really successful trials that are being undertaken at the moment globally include consumer rewards and incentives. So creating and establishing loyalty and a reward system. So encouraging people to refill and reuse and giving them some type of reward incentive that's going to encourage them to keep using this over and over again. The other things is that they need to be really intuitive and user-friendly. So we don't want as consumers something that's difficult for us to use. And obviously of the four models, each person here today will have a different preference on whether they want to go back in store or they would prefer to do it at home. And obviously the most important one is that the system needs to be affordable. So we do see that refillable and reusable packaging is a positive step to minimising environmental footprints. So I wanted to share with you today a couple of examples of some really innovative and intuitive solutions that are out there. And there's such a broad range of examples I'm going to talk to you today just to show you what really is happening around the world. And obviously we start with the Global Loop program. And the Loop program is designed to be durable, reusable and refillable, and a significant alternative to single-use packaging. And there's a lot of consideration taken within the Loop model for design of the actual packaging to ensure that the design of the packaging is not only attractive and aesthetically pleasing to the consumer, it has design functionality, it's durable, it can withstand multiple uses, it is used with recycled content, and there's a methodology behind all of the packaging that's designed through the Loop that's quite innovative. The Loop model is designed to achieve environmental benefits of the packaging, and it needs to ensure that the required number of return trips of users is successful. And this is a critical design aspect to the balance of the environmental factors such as energy and water that will be incurred with extra packaging weights, transport and cleaning involved. And obviously it's really important, as I mentioned previously, to have life cycle assessment. Now then we head over to Europe, and this is the Good Refill system from P&G Hair Care. And these are aluminium bottles that are refilled with recyclable refill pouches. And it's made using 60% less plastic than the standard shampoo bottles. And the company has identified that this replaces the single-use plastic by 300 million virgin plastic bottles per year, and it reduces virgin plastic usage by 50% in shampoo and conditioner bottles by the end of this year. We then head over to Nature's Organics, and in 2020, Nature's Organics launched a refill and reusable starter kit. And there's two models that are being used here. One, you can actually buy this in a retail store and then just buy the refill pouches thereafter, or you can actually purchase this online through an e-commerce platform. They are aluminium reusable bottles, and then the pouches are return to store recyclable in Australia. The refill pouch contains more active ingredients, and it has 75% less water compared to normal cleaning products. And obviously they've identified that this is a lower environmental impact for their products. Then we have Olay, and Olay Regeneratus with Moisture was using this as a trial to resell the refillable containers. And it was to not only reduce plastic, but to try and encourage people to return the pods and then get them refilled. And they have potentially attracted more millennials using this particular product by 8% since they went to this reduce and refill model. Then we have Sif at Home Refill from the UK. And this is a new at-home model that allows consumers to refill and reuse their spray bottles over and over again. It contains a 10% concentrated formula, and you start to see that there is a pattern here, particularly with formulas, the concentrated formulas, because what it is, it's making sure that we're not shipping water, and consumers can actually fill the bottles at home with the water from their taps. It's a no-mess solution, and it's made with 75% less plastic, and it's 100% recyclable, and they aim to move all of it to recycled plastic. We then go to Zero Co, and they have the dispensers are made from plastic that's come out of the ocean, the beaches, and landfill. And then the refill pouch is a return to store recyclable pouch, and the spout can be removed so that it doesn't affect the recyclability of the pouch. And they have a fantastic online system to encourage people to return their pouches and their containers if they need a new dispenser through a pack that Zero Co have made, and you ship it back for free, and then they ship back some new products that are with reusable, recyclable packaging. So it's a great system, and it's extremely popular in Australia. We then head to Colgate Palmolive, and they have the new Fill Drop and Foam, and this is for their soft soap, which is their #1 liquid hand soap brand. And this is about reducing plastic waste and making sure that the bottles are refillable, recyclables. Obviously, they're aluminium bottles again, and they've gone to the same format of the tablet form, which reduces the amount of water that's used and doesn't have to be transported anymore when it's shipped, and it's used over and over and over again. And then we head into things like in-store refill solutions, like this one in Singapore, and you can bring your own containers to fill with eco-friendly cleaning products and toiletries. This is a muesli range, which also has a refillable pouch, so that you can buy this container and then simply refill it with muesli as you go. This is a back in-store solution, and this is from Unpacked in Singapore, and this is offering refill stations in-store, everything from pasta to tea to soy sauce and snacks. Häagen-Dazs is a really great one. This is for at home, so you can order your ice cream in one of these containers, which is durable. It's cleaned and refilled and then sent back to you. And they Häagen-Dazs have designed this double-walled steel canister, so apparently you can sit with the ice cream in your lap in your bedroom and eat your ice cream in bed and watch television, and you won't freeze your hands, which is a fantastic example. And then we look at Waitrose Unpacked in the United Kingdom, and there was a high demand for refillables, and Waitrose moved to refillable stations, and this is everything from pastas to loose fill. And they found that when they moved to this particular stores to the refillable solutions, that the sales increased by 9% in just 6 months in some of the product ranges that they were offering, and 50% increase in sales in refillable frozen fruit and vegetables, and a 24% increase in detergent and washing liquid sales. This is a Whole Foods range in Singapore, and this is about not only minimising single-use problematic materials, but encouraging you to bring your own bags, your own glass bottles, your own tote bags, your eco-friendly bags, and then refilling it over and over again from the store. So it makes it really easy for the consumer. Nestle have started doing trials on soluble coffee refill stations in store. And they are very intuitive and easy to use. And you'll also see in the picture there's pet food now, which they're trialing. This is another zero waste grocery store, and this is actually an Australian range of grocery stores that has 50 outlets across the world. And their whole ethos is sustainability, reducing single-use problematic materials, and they encourage consumers to bring their own bags and containers and refill hundreds of products within their trials. There is also a number of in-store refill stations that are being retrialed, and a lot of consumers are finding that these are they're really convenient for them, and it also eliminates unnecessary problematic single-use packaging. Nivea in Germany have been working on trials with shower gel refill stations, and this is a very interactive, intelligent packaging concept, which also has a rewards program and a loyalty program sitting behind it. And then there is a New Zealand eco-conscious range called EcoStore, and they have 100 refill stations now across New Zealand alone, and they are starting to grow within Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong. And this is for bulk products, so 5 litre and 20 litre bulk products, predominantly shampoos, conditioners, laundry liquids, dishwashing liquids, and the customers can come in and choose the size of the bulk refills and simply position it under the container and refill it and then take it home. So it's nice and easy. Sukin have developed some trials in a boutique retail store, and what they are trying to do is see whether the consumers will take up acceptance of beauty products, particularly body washes, shampoos, etc. And as you can see in the image on the right, they have really intuitive refill stations to make it easy for the consumers to come in, refill, pop it into their trolley and go. The Body Shop is a really fantastic example because it is one of the first examples many, many years ago about refill and reuse. And I think that the founder, the late founder of The Body Shop, would be really proud of what's happening in refill stations around the world now. They tried this in the late 80s and early 90s. And unfortunately, at that time, consumers didn't really embrace the concept. But now Body Shop has come back to the market as well, and they've just launched 500 stores globally that they're going to roll out with refill stations, and they are aiming to add an additional 300 stores globally in 2022. There are other companies like Green Culture in Singapore, and they predominantly do hand soaps, laundry liquids, cleaners. This one's fantastic because this is for everything from wine to rum to Szaky, and you come in and then you can also fill glass bottles with sauces and oils and vinegars. Then we have some really new ideas that are happening around the world, and this one really stood out, and this is Sickless from Indonesia, and they're trying to reinvent the future of retail by delivering the refills to the door, not only to eliminate and reduce single-use and problematic materials, but what they're trying to do is encourage through apps, so interactive apps, to make sure that people can just go online, click on the app, place their order, and then their delivery gets to their door nice and easy at a low cost. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the success of these trials. And then we have another really interesting example, and this is Boomerang Water, and it's a small US on-site batch bottling water company that provides water for commercial venues like hotels and college campuses. It works with OI glass to create a durable glass water bottle for their system. And I thought that I could share with you just a little bit from the owner of Boomerang and the developer of this solution, and what he believes and why this is such an important solution for the world.
On this planet together, if we don't start thinking as a human race of solving these big and tackling these huge issues such as single-use plastic, the future is it's tough. It's a very tough discussion. I've got children. I look at them. And we need to set the example now more than ever of what closed loop or what sustainability truly is.
And then I just wanted to end today's discussion with one more video, which I think really helps understand the benefits and value of reuse and refill.
This is a film about plastic pollution. Actually, it's about solutions. If you want to get rid of packaging waste, don't let packaging become waste. Reuse it. You can reuse this bottle to make your own cleaning product, like that. And how many plastic bottles did that save, Everdrop? Nice. And don't buy single-use bottles with bubbly water if you can add bubbles to your tap water. That saved 6 billion single-use bottles. Right, SodaStream? Another great way to reuse is to refill. Great for cat food or coffee, but don't mix. Hey, and why not reuse on the go? You order the spiced pumpkin latte, Cup Club takes care of the cleaning, potentially saving this many cups in the UK every year. And should all these single-use bottles be different, or can they share one reusable design? How many single-use bottles have you saved, Coke? Wow, and that's just in Latin America. So if you're looking for packaging solutions, read this guide. It's out and it's free, so get yours. Or reuse someone else's copy.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to share some fantastic innovations that are happening around the world with reuse and refillable models. And I, like you, look forward to seeing what is coming in store locally and globally. And I hope that this has excited you and encouraged you to consider using refill and reuse models within your own business. And should you have any additional questions, please reach out to me at any stage, and stay safe.
Thank you, Nerida, for this. Extremely informative and a great way to educate people to be more sustainable. We now have Shira Rosen, who is chairman of the Israeli Packaging Institute. Shira will be presenting the different approaches for designing an eco-friendly packaging and analysing the implications of each design.
Hello, I'm Shira Rosen, and I'll be talking today about different directions to develop eco-friendlier packaging and how it is the best way to choose the packaging sustainability strategy suitable for your company. But before I begin, one slide about myself. I'm 27 years in the packaging field. Out of those, 7 years in Unilever and 18 years as head of the packaging development department in Strauss Group. I'm also the chairman of the Packaging Institute in Israel. For the last 2 years, I opened my own consultancy called PackTech, consulting about sustainability and innovation and efficiency in packaging. And I also teach the packaging field in the Food and Biotechnology Engineering faculty in the Technion. So once upon a time, we didn't have any burden with packaging. As Mother Nature developed a very sustainable packaging from renewable materials and compostable. It also, Easy Peel comes in bunches as a multi-pack, and very smart as it reflects us a level of ripeness of the banana, telling us when is the best time to eat it. But not for the modern life, it's not always enough. For example, if we want to extend shelf life, I don't know if you know, but you can extend shelf life by covering the edges of the banana by 7 to 10 days, or buy different levels of banana in the same packaging. So here you need an extra packaging. Also, if you want to drink banana shake or want to take it on the go and want to prevent it from smashing in your bag, then also you need an extra packaging. Communication today is very important, and we need to deliver a lot of information, especially a lot of regulations. So here again, we need to add some packaging decoration. And of course, if we want to connect to the digital world, to all the smart applications, then also here we need to add elements to the natural packaging. And if we want to transport it to different parts of the world, then here also we need a transportation packaging that will protect the packaging from all the chain value. So we see that packaging is necessary, and if we analyze all the needs, then we see that we have like 3 levels of needs. The basic one is the functional needs that I talked about: the containment, the protection, the preservation for longer shelf life, and of course the safety of the consumers. Then we have the cognitive needs that are consumer wants transparency and build trust and convenience while using the product, and also enjoy it by fun. And the last level, of course, is the engagement. And all of these 3 are very important for the packaging. So packaging is necessary, but what can we do to make it more sustainable? I analyzed it to 4 different approaches. The first one is design for optimization. That here we talked about the functionality, that it has to preserve and protect the product. Otherwise, we will have the product and the packaging will turn into a waste. We want to extend the shelf life. And also here we have options of decreasing the packaging itself, but also the waste or the consumption or the energy and water that is put into the process. I'll talk about it. Then we have the second approach, which talks about responsible sourcing. Plastic is not a renewable source, so we had to invent, not we, but everybody, renewable resources that come from the nature, or recyclable materials that are also can be renewed until a certain amount. And of course, prevent from harmful substances coming into the packaging. The third approach is the circular economy. The most circular is the reusable, that you can reuse it as much as you want. Then there is the recycling or the energy recovery that you bring in as responsible resource sourcing at the end of the process. And the biodegradable and compostable that comes back as compost. The last one is the non-disposable packaging, that here also we have the reusable option, edible packaging, and non-soluble and water-soluble packaging. But it's not so easy. The optimum would be to have less packaging, less waste, less risk, less disposal, more reusability, more recyclability, more using recycled materials and renewable materials and biodegradable or compostable materials. But they are trade-offs, not all go together. For example, if we go down with the weight of the packaging, then if we go down too much, it will turn out to be waste. It will smash in the, or damage in the, through the chain value. It can't be reusable if it's too thin, because then it will also not sustain a lot of cycles. Usually reusable packaging are more robust. And of course, we know also that recycled materials are downgraded through the recycling process, and then it doesn't go together with going down with the packaging. Usually the opposite, or stay with the same weight of packaging. Another sample is biodegradable and compostable, usually are not suitable for recycling. So you have to choose which option you want, or do a couple of options offer. For example, look at the Coca-Cola. They offer different solutions. For example, the first one on the left is a more recyclable packaging. They took off the colors, and they are suited to bottle-to-bottle recycling. They also declare that some of their packaging are 100% from recycled materials, and they have an option also for 100% from plant-based. If you use also not plant-based, but paper-based packaging, not 100%, but like I think 70 or 80% of the bottle is based off paper. The cans are also can be recycled and can come as a recycled version. The glass water and bottle is reusable, of course, but here you have to have the system that collects. So we usually see it in restaurants. And the last one, a nice gimmick, is a bottle from ice that is non-disposable, but is used only in beaches and selling on the spot and can't be transported a lot in the chain value. Another sample is the capsules, that here we have options to recycle and to be recycled. We see options of compostable capsules, that it's very hard to reach it, as capsules need a very high barrier to oxygen. And the last one is reusability to other uses. This is a necklace that my mother did from capsules. When we talked about optimization, the 4 less, so it can be going down the packaging, but sometimes I call it more is less. We go up in the packaging weight, but we prevent waste while the chain value, and sometimes it's more valuable. Looking also at all the chain value, how much energy and water is put inside, and try to go down in it. And less usage of the product itself to prevent waste. For example, once the hole of the toothpaste was bigger to take out more material, now they're looking to use the exact amount you need and not to waste also the product itself. So how can you choose which is the best approach? I suggest to look at the 3 pillars. One is the impact. How much impact does the change do to the earth in terms of emissions, landfill, resource consumption? Look at all the trade-offs. How much does it protect and preserve the product or the functionality? if it's available, this also comes together with the feasibility. When we're talking about feasibility, of course, is the chosen option, is the available material. For example, now it's very hard to find good recycled materials. Sometimes it's much more expensive. Of course, safety, also knowledge, technology in infrastructure in the company, but also, for example, if we want to recycle, it's not enough to develop a recycled material. We have to have all the infrastructure that collects, knows how to source and reprocess the material. So we're talking about feasibility, and of course that it has to suit the brand's strategy, the brand's value or the product's value, the consumer perceptions, that he understands the offer of the sustainability, to understand all the trade-offs, and to have a right business model. And the last one is to know to communicate the change to all the chain value. I'm going again and again about all, looking holistically about the whole chain value. So these are the three pillars that you have to analyze and to choose the best options that can suit you. If, for example, you use recyclability, you have to make sure that it can be recycled in your country. Are the consumers, do they understand and cooperate and put it in the right bin? Are there existing collecting infrastructures that collect the right bins in the area? The sorting is the most important. It's 80% out of the quality of the recycled materials. And if you don't have the right sorting option that can detect which kind of material it is, the packaging will not reach the right reprocessing plant and won't be recycled, and even interfere other materials. Of course, not every material is recycled. It has to fit the recycling infrastructure. And of course, I'm talking here about mechanical recycling. For chemical recycling, it's much easier. You don't, for the materials to design a packaging, more monomaterials, not necessarily monomaterials, and it's open for other materials. But also there, you have to make sure that there is the systems for it, and that it can be cleaned properly. And in the end of the day, is there a demand for the recycled materials, then they will open more reprocessing plants and reach consistency and quality, and if required, full approval. So it's not enough only to design a recycled material, but to make sure that it has the whole system to recycle it. And then it depends on what end of use. Is it bottle to bottle, or is it for different purpose, or is it energy recovery? Then it depends on how you design the packaging. Today, there are all kind of new technologies helping for sorting to detect the right packaging. For example, I believe you heard about Holy Grail that uses smart technologies to detect what kind of packaging it is. And then also here you have to make sure that there is the infrastructure of high resolution cameras that can detect and read the watermarks that are on the packaging and decode the information. So also here, they are developing a lot of technologies, but you have to make sure that it works for all the system. Smart technologies can be also used to reflect information to the consumer, or is the packaging recyclable? What kind of material? Which kind of bin should he put it in? So if we look in the recycle system, we need all the stakeholders to work together, the producer to design the right packaging that can be recycled and also put inside his use recycled materials and even recycled system for post-industrial recycling. The consumer also to cooperate, to buy more recycled materials, and of course, at the end of his use, to put it in the right bin. We talked about the recycling systems that have to have the whole system to recycle, and the regulations that will make it clear and push everyone towards more recycling. If we move on to the reusability, it's a very nice idea. I remember getting reusable milk bottles to our door and then putting it in the end and collected by the milkman. But here this trend is coming back, but it's not all easy. It's easier when it's refillable, but then only part of the packaging is reusable and part is not. If it's returnable, then you have to have a collecting system. And what kind of collecting system and washing system is there? It needs extra infrastructure and process. Do you have to make the packaging more robust for being reusable? Usually, yes. And how many cycles can you use in this packaging? So it's a lot of thought put into designing a reusable packaging, and I brought only few questions to be asked when designing it. This is a sample of a great company, SodaStream, that I have the privilege also to work with them. It's a consultant. Once it was a medium company in Israel, but once they understood that they have a very high value of reusability, then they did this brilliant ad that they put one family, 5 years, 70,050 bottles and cans can be replaced with this one bottle machine. And of course, PepsiCo bought them a few years ago, and now they're a very known and big company. Here, as e-commerce also developed a Loop, a very nice system of e-commerce packaging that is more robust packaging, as you can see, but are reusable, and also the transport packaging that can keep the temperature and protect, and all is collected and reusable. But here you see you need a special business model. Here's another interesting business model that took it from renting bicycles using RFID on the cups that can collect the information. If we talk about refillable, then there are smart solutions like this that you add the water in at home, and most of the packaging is reusable, and you only buy the filling on the bottom, and once you connect it, it dissolves in the water and can be reused. Very nice idea. Refillable here is a solution that combines also compostable materials, and what is nice that you don't have to clean after use. You just throw the refillable that can be composted. But also here, if you use pulp, for example, that is renewable and compostable. Usually pulp doesn't go together with liquids, doesn't have any barrier. So here is a company also that I work with, W-Cycle, that they developed a secret sauce you do with the waste of pulp. It's patented, and then it doesn't dissolve the water and the oil, and it can be heated. It also can be put in the freezer at temperatures from -4 to 270. And also you have to, when you develop, you have to verify it and do tests. So they did the compostable tests and food safe, and make sure that all the baddies are not inside, like the BPA, and so it will make it food safe. So developing, you also have to verify it in the end. The last option is the edible packaging, materials that can be all dissolved in water and then drank or eaten. This is from, I think, wax. Or it can be wax or other materials that can be eaten, not always very tasty. And also you have to make sure that if you don't want it to get dirty, then you have to have an outside packaging to contain it that is not edible. But it can also be a sustainable solution. So we talked about the different approaches, and to measure it, usually the best way is to do a packaging life cycle analysis that analyzes all the materials and the resources that come in and all that goes out, and in which way, whether recycling, compostable, landfill, or energy recovery, or doesn't go, or it's a circular economy, and look at all the stages from sourcing the material to manufacturing the material and the packaging itself, then distributing it, the way of using it, and the end of life, and see what is the impact. So we talked about all the options, the 4 options: the design for optimization, the responsible resourcing, circular economy, and non-disposal. And we talked how is the best way to choose through all the 3 pillars of impact, feasibility, brand strategy, and how to check it, all of it. So here my lecture comes to its end. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much.
Another great video on educating our audience on how to create more sustainable packaging to protect our planet. Next up, we have Valentin Fournel, who is the Director of Research and Development and Services Eco-Conception at CTO. Valentin will be explaining the levers to make household packaging more circular and reduce their environmental impacts.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Valentin Fournel, and I am the Eco-Design Director at CTO. I will tell you about the role of circular economy in reducing the environmental impacts of packaging and papers, with the example of France. So first of all, who is CTO? So CTO, we are a company whose mission is to help our clients, FMCG companies, in reducing the environmental impacts of their products, packaging and papers. As such, we are really at the interface of circular economy in between FMCG companies, sorting, recycling operators, municipalities, and consumers. Our ambition is to build a more sustainable world, combining environmental and economic performances. Today, when we look at circular economy and environmental impacts from a broader scale, we see that we have various environmental challenges. The environmental impact is just one criteria. It's made of many, such as, for example, as you can see on this picture, the waste that we can produce, and if not well managed, that can actually become abandoned in nature, with its impact that we all know on biodiversity. Of course, it's also extraction of resources, and it's also CO2 emissions and its impact on global warming. And those just 3 indicators are only an example of a lot of different types of indicators that can help us identify what are the environmental impacts of each of our consumption, of the products that we produce, and their packaging as well. When we look at France, if we look at the average carbon footprint of a French person, it is approximately 11 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. Packaging represents around 0.75% of this carbon footprint. But packaging has an impact on a much wider perimeter, which represents around 40% of the total, which are, of course, goods and private services and food. We have now an international agreement to try to lower our CO2 emissions and lower the global warming, or at least try to lessen the increase of global warming. In order to reach this global agreement, the Paris Agreement, each citizen needs to lower its carbon footprint from the 11 tons of CO2 equivalent today up to 2 tons of CO2 equivalent by 2050. This is a huge challenge. And of course, we, CTO, and together with the whole packaging value chain, do believe that it is possible, but we need to make the right choices and the right actions. First, maybe it's very important to remember that when we talk about packaging, packaging is not sold as a packaging. Packaging is sold with a product inside, and the role of packaging is to be able to transport, protect this product. When we look at food products, for example, we see that the packaging represents around 5% of the average contribution to the climate change indicator of a food product. Okay, 5%. Of course, this is depending on the product that is contained within the packaging. We can see that, for example, in the case of meat, packaging represents less than 5%, around 3%. When we look at beverages, it could be higher than 5%, up to 20%. However, what is very important to understand with this figure is that the priority of the priority is to keep protecting the product. That's why packaging has a role. And whatever we decide to do, you will see afterwards in the slides, so all the actions that we can undertake should never be while increasing the wastage of the products contained in the packaging. We currently face main challenges, two main challenges, I would say, which are very broad. First one is, how do we actually prepare the future while dealing with the present? Okay, so we currently have systems in place that have been huge developments on the market and allows today for a reduction of environmental impacts of packaging. However, we do know that it is not enough. We need to go further. And so we need to work on the future solutions. And what we know is that the future will be multi-solutions. So while dealing with the present, we will also need to work on the future and identify which are the solutions which will be the most adapted to every case, to every kind of product, every consumption mode, every distribution mode, and so on and so on. These are really the two challenges that we face. So how do we reduce the environmental impacts of packaging? We have four main areas on which we focus with our clients to help them reduce their impacts. First one, of course, is reduction. It's the first action to take when we are talking about eco-design and reducing environmental impacts. It could be reduction of the packaging or reuse of the packaging, allowing to not produce a new one. Secondly, it is improve recycling and recyclability. We'll go more into details afterwards. Third, work on the origin of the material. What can I do to work on the material that I'm using in my packaging to be sure that it has a reduced environmental impact? And then at the end, it's how can we help consumers to do the right sorting gest? So first, if we look at reduce and reuse. Reduction, as I said, is really the first eco-design action to think about. Why? Because reducing the quantity of packaging allows to reduce the quantity of raw materials to extract, transform, and process. It allows to reduce the weight of product to transport. And it allows to reduce the quantity of waste to manage after consumption of the product. So we win almost on all types of indicators when we work on reduction. You can see, for example, on the right, a simulation on our B tool, which is a simplified LCA analysis tool. And you see, for example, between a 35-gram cardboard box and a 25-gram cardboard box that we will win at each stage of the life of the packaging. So if the packaging performance stays the same, okay, to remind you about the 5% that I just talked about before, if the packaging performance stays the same, then the packaging reduction allows for a reduction for its environmental impact on all indicators, whether we are talking about CO2 emissions, water consumption, pollutions, and so on. And this is true for all types of materials. So this is, of course, the first action to take. But sometimes we can ask ourselves, okay, what kind of reduction can I do? The most, I would say, the one with the most impact with the same performance is, of course, suppress. But can we suppress all type of packaging? No, of course not. The packaging is here for a purpose, once again, to protect the product. However, in some cases, the packaging does not have any protection functionality. In that case, the more packaging we put towards this product, and the more impact it will have on the environment. So the best way is to try to suppress this packaging and to work on another way to deliver the functionality that the packaging had. If we look at another type of product on the right chart, we can see that when the product is actually perishable and we can waste this product, then of course packaging has also a role to play to keep this product from being wasted. And that's where we are trying to work on finding the right amount of packaging, the right impact of packaging so that it helps protect the product and it's not too much so that it will higher the environmental impact of the packaged good. So the key is really to find the right amount of packaging for each type of product. When does the packaging allow to reduce the environmental impacts of the couple product packaging? Of course, besides suppressing the packaging, besides reducing the packaging, which could be done by lightweighting the packaging, for example, or trying to suppress some elements, or to reduce the size of the packaging for the same amount of product, we can also work on developing reuse. But watch out, reuse is not an easy solution that will be there right away, okay? To develop reusable packaging, we need to develop reuse system. And to develop reuse system, we need to work towards upscaling reuse at national level. So if we're talking about France, for example, we need to change practicing and existing value chain to further develop reuse in order to limit the environmental impact of the packaging and to reach regulatory objectives. Reuse on huge distances will not be interesting from an environmental perspective. That's why we need to adapt the system, the reuse system, so that its impact is the lowest possible. So when developing a reuse system at national level, we need to work on packaging format and processes. We need to work on communication and mobilization of the consumer. We need to work on collection and recovery systems. We need to work on the logistic, of course, and on cleaning standards and cleaning capacity on the whole territory. These are the challenges that we are currently working on regarding the reuse of packaging. So as a summary, you can see here some good practices regarding reuse. Of course, trying to lightweight some of the elements of the packaging is a good practice. Trying to compress the product whenever it is possible. For example, for shampoo, for hygiene products, it is possible. Trying to suppress unnecessary packaging elements, such as the cardboard box or the box around this lipstick. It's also working on how can I actually have a reuse system for big bottles or flasks of products by working on much lighter packaging that will be used to refill the original packaging. And then work on the reuse system that you can see, for example, with the startup Cozy on cosmetics, as well as reuse of trays for some salad bars that we can find in supermarkets. And we have all types now of declination and examples of good practices in reuse. Second, if we work now on improving recycling and recyclability, I will not go into too much detail as we will have another session in April to discuss more in depth this subject of recyclability. However, what we know for France is that today we have a 68% recycling rate for all household packaging in France, meaning that we have 3.7 million tons of packaging that are recycled. And why is this important for the environment? It's because recycling those 3.7 million tons packaging every year allows to save for 1.6 million tons of CO2 emissions, representing approximately 800,000 fewer cars on the roads every year. So this is, of course, very important to continue to develop those recycling rates. When we talk about recycling, what does it become? It allows actually for the recovery of materials into new products and new packaging. So for example, we have currently, this is the state for France, we have a recycling stream for clear PET and colored PET bottles and flasks. Okay, that goes back into textile fibers, packaging, and so on. We have a recycling stream for all rigid packaging in HDPE and PP. We have also a recycling stream for LDPE films, going back into tubes and bags. And we are working on new recycling stream to be able to recycle PS packaging, PET trays, and PP films. But the streams do not currently exist in France at larger scale. Then besides of plastics, we have a recycling stream for paper and cardboard. We have recycling stream for cartons. We have for steel, for aluminium, and for glass. If we look now at the recycling rate per different types of material, so 68% is the average for all packaging type. Of course, the reality is very different if we are talking about glass, steel, paper, or plastics. So we can see that the materials with the highest recycling rate are currently glass and steel, with respectively 85% recycling rate and 100% recycling rate. We have paper and cardboard that are in the average. And then we have work to develop on beverage cartons and aluminium, as well as paper and cardboard. For plastics, we have two different realities. We have bottle and flask that will recycle very well, with a recycling rate of 55%. And then we have all the other types of plastic packaging that are either the rigid that are not bottle and flask or flexibles, which have currently only a 7.5% recycling rate, which is clearly not enough. But it's also taking into account the fact that in France, it's very new to be able to sort all those new plastic packaging type. So it's developing and it will be increasing. However, we do consider today, when we look at plastic, that only 65% of the plastic packaging put on the market in France are recyclable. It's in progress because a few years back we were at 50%, but of course it's not enough. So of the remaining 35%, we have 15% where we have the recycling streams in development. So R&D projects and pilot lines are going to be developed to develop those new recycling streams. The ones for PS, I was talking about earlier, flexible PP and PET trays. And then we have 20% of plastic packaging put in the market in France that are not recyclable and do not have any projects to be recyclable in the near future. So it means that we need to work on eco-design actions to make them recyclable. We continue on the good practices for improving recycling and recyclability. You can see some examples. So we talked about the refill system. In the reduction part, of course, it's even better if those refill systems are made of mono PE, for example, and so we can actually recycle them in the process, in the stream that exists today. We are also working on more generally on monomaterial. How do I go towards more monomaterial? And this monomaterial should be, of course, recyclable, meaning it should have a recycling stream existing in practice and at scale. And then we work on also, if we are monomaterial, go towards the main part. So for example, the paper cup that you can see on this image, the last one on the bottom, it is a paper cup that is made from 97% of papers. So we need to develop the solutions for tomorrow. And then it's working, if we talk about plastics, on plastics that can be mono-resin, so with only one resin. And we have a project currently going on to work on trays that would be only mono PET trays, or also those yogurt pods that you can see that will be 100% made from PS. And work on the origin of the material is the third action to think about when trying to lower the environmental impacts of packaging. Of course, the origin of the material, one of the key actions to take is really to work on integrating recycled content within their packaging. You see some examples, of course, in plastic bottles, trying to go towards more rPET, recycled PET within your packaging, but it's true also for glass, for HDPE plastic packaging, for films as well, so in LDPE, and of course also for aluminium and steel. So when we talk about the state of recycled content today, of course, the example I just showed you, they already exist, they are on the market, they are possible. However, in the future, what we will expect is to have more examples like this. For example, we've seen now in a few supermarkets in France, this new gray milk bottle. It's very new on the market. It's actually using our opaque PET. So opaque PET, which have been have shown some challenges to the recycling industry. Today, we actually are able to take them and put them back into a closed loop to make this gray bottle. Of course, we need to change the market because milk that is not in a white bottle can be confusing for consumer. But if you communicate around why it is gray, then of course it is accepted by the market. We will have also the development of more rPE films with more integration of recycled content, especially recycled content coming from post-household consumption, which is the most difficult to do. We talked about recycled content, but of course, one other way to work on trying to lower the environmental impacts could be to work on bio-based materials. If we look at plastics, for example, so today we see already on the market some bio-PET bottles existing, so with 30% of bio-sourced PET. We have also some bio-PE packaging on this market coming from sugarcane. We have also all new types of plastic resins such as PLA, starch-based, PHA, PBS, and so on. But those packaging were actually developed while thinking about composting, either industrial or home composting. In the future, what we will see arriving on the market will be working on conventional resins, so the one that already have recycling streams, such as PET, PE, PP, but made from wood, for example, or made from CO2, such as the product that we've seen with L'Oréal and Lanzatec. So these are the challenges that we are facing. How can we actually get out of oil to produce plastic? And our understanding is that we need to focus on currently conventional resin that already exists at scale, that we know how to recycle at scale, but that we need to produce, trying to lower the environmental impacts of the raw material. Okay, so if we look at all this, you can see on this slide some examples of good practices that we currently see on the market. And help the consumers do the right gesture. It's also how can we work on eco-design to be sure that the consumer will not create some abandoned waste, for example. So we will have soon on the market only bottles with solidary caps. This is of course very interesting. We are currently working also on sleeves on bottles to be sure that it is separated not by the consumer, but within the process of collection, sorting, and recycling. Now you will tell me, but how do we work on all this? So of course, CTO is here also to help companies in trying the right solutions for their products, for their processing lines, for their distribution system and consumers. So first we work on R&D and innovation. How can we actually accelerate the development of new solutions for tomorrow? Then we work on how to actually share all this information with all the potential partners, with all clients, all companies, so that they know that the solutions are out there. So it's we are working on information sharing, tools, services, and support to help companies. And then last but not least, fee modulation to encourage the change and the eco-design actions. So if we're talking about R&D and innovations, just one slide to tell you a little bit how we work. We have a R&D project that we can conduct either on our side with technical centers, such as the CTP, for example, for the paper industry. We work also with CTCPA or IPC, which has technical committees focusing on plastics or alimentarity or new development of packaging and materials. Then we also do call for tenders for companies to work on specific solutions that could happen on the markets. So it's all what you see on this slide, the appel à projet on recycling and eco-design. We also have technical committees with the whole value chain to develop knowledge around the recyclability, the sortability, and the reusability of packaging. So it's, for example, COTREP, CEREC, that you can see here, and then have been active for several years or even decennies. We have also a program called CTO Prospective, which allows to scout for future technologies such as CO2 to make plastics, as I told you earlier. And you will have also this absolutely wonderful program called the Circular Challenge, when we are able also to source startups from all over the world to identify all the the new solutions that are currently being developed, and then try to accelerate their coming on the market. Together with also trying to get them funding, to get them meet clients and companies, so that we find really the best solutions for tomorrow. So we go very quickly on this. Then if we talk about the information, tools, services, and support. So we have a lot of different tools that you can use, such as webinars on eco-design. We have plenty of information on eco-design guidelines that you can use from the different technical committees that we have. Good practices also that we want to share so that everyone knows that it does exist. Then we have tools. Less is our newest one that actually was out in last November, which is a methodology guide to help you in reducing your packaging. So it's really giving you all the questions that you need to ask yourself when trying to reduce their packaging, and see if maybe you can come up with new solutions with less packaging while keeping the same performance of product protection, of course. We have Phil, which is really for people wanting to start an eco-design action or an eco-design, I would say, strategy. So trying to fill in some checklists on where to start. We have then Tri, which is a tool to help you assess the recyclability of your packaging. We will ask you very specific questions on your packaging, and at the end it will say, okay, is it recyclable or not? What will be the recyclability rate, and so on. And then we have B, which is really an expert tool to help you make some simplified LCA to choose between different packaging solutions and identify the ones that have the less impact on the environment. And at the end, we also have, of course, this fee modulation trying to accompany towards better packaging that will be less impactful on the environment. So this is done for today. I hope it was clear and of interest. And of course, do not hesitate to ask any questions that you can send me by email or some other ways. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Many thanks to Valentin for this video. Another great addition to our Circular Economy Conference. Our next speaker is Clem Ugorji, who is Vice President at the Coca-Cola Company. Clem will be covering all topics about circular economy on plastics in Africa, where there is a crisis of growing waste pollution, of which plastics is a large and problematic area.
I'm very pleased to be part of this conference, and I'd like to express my appreciation to the organizers for the invitation to speak. In this brief presentation, I intend to highlight three issues. The first would be plastic pollution as a potent threat to Africa's development. Secondly, how Africa can leverage the circular economy model to turn this threat into opportunities. And lastly, how multi-stakeholder partnerships are evolving and helping to achieve a circular economy for plastics in Africa. I think, Africa's potential to become the next growth engine of the world economy has been much talked about. The continent is endowed with some of the world's most valuable mineral resources, which has made it the go-to region for industrial raw materials and commodity products. The continent has a population of about 1.3 billion people, which represents a global, a huge consumer market opportunity, and has also one of the world's youngest demographics. In spite of this, however, Africa's development potential has been under threat and will continue to be under threat for a long time to come. Across the continent, two of the biggest barriers to sustainable development are the widespread poverty, which is estimated at about 41% of the population living below the poverty line. The second factor is the growing waste pollution crisis. And as we all know, both of these factors significantly contribute to climate change risks. Despite not being able to cope with its current, volume of waste generation, the continent's waste volume is actually projected to triple by 2050, according to the World Bank. Now, over the years, plastic waste has remained a very visible and problematic component of solid waste pollution across Africa. The negative impact of this is clearly visible, and we see them in dump sites, we see them in the waterways, we see them along the beaches, as well as in the clogged drainages that trigger perennial flooding and associated damages in many areas, in many cities across the continent. But the average plastic collection and recycling rates, remain around 10%. And this very low performance has been because of weak policies and the lack of scaled infrastructure to collect and recycle plastics in particular. Now, without effective intervention, this situation is likely to get worse, given the projection that Africa, along with the Middle East, will outpace the rest of the world in plastic consumption volumes in the coming decades. Luckily, there is a clear consensus globally and also here in Africa that the current linear approach to consumption is not sustainable. Okay, hence there is the need to shift to a circular economy model. With this approach, there is active focus on designing out waste, using and reusing materials to keep them longer in the loop, as well as generating and replenishing natural systems to continue to sustain us and future generations. A shift to a circular economy requires us to make adjustments to our lifestyles as individuals, as corporates, as communities, and as governments. As has been demonstrated in some other regions, and we're increasingly seeing this reflected also here in Africa across many sectors. A circular economy model can convert Africa's overflowing waste, including plastic waste, into valuable resources, presenting opportunities for new investments, for job creation, for skills building and innovation, as well as enabling people across socioeconomic sectors to earn more income and create more wealth for themselves and for society. But shifting to a circular economy, will not come easy because it will not be a personal journey. It will require shared understanding, commitment, and collaborative action by governments, businesses, civil society, citizens, and development partners to change the way we produce and consume goods, and also the way we manage the resulting waste. Now, there is not only a heightened awareness about the circular economy in Africa, we are also seeing increasing efforts at building collaborations and platforms at industry, at country, and at the regional level. Notable examples of this will include PETCO, which is an industry-led coalition in South Africa that is driving the recovery and recycling of PET packaging plastic. We also have, the National Plastic Action Partnerships, or the NPAPs, which is promoted by the World Economic Forum through the Global Plastic Action Partnership. Closely related to that is the Plastic Pact, which is also promoted by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And then we have, the Africa Circular Economy Alliance, which is jointly promoted by a number of national governments in the region to be able to institutionalize the circular economy in the continent. Then lastly, we have, an NGO-led network of experts and organizations that is committed to advancing circularity across Africa, which is the Africa Circular Economy Network. It is only through such multi-stakeholder alignment and collaboration that we can really begin to make the challenging shift to a circular economy in a systemic manner. For instance, transforming plastic waste into industrial materials will require not only policies and regulations led by the government, it will also require product innovation and investment, which will naturally be led by the private sector. Now, all of these sectors working together will facilitate harmonization of goals and reduce the contending and conflicting interests that have stymied such progress in the past. An example of what is possible in Africa has been demonstrated in South Africa, actually, where the Food and Beverage Industry Coalition, PETCO, has for over 15 years worked with other stakeholders to foster a PET packaging recycling operation, which has become among the most successful models in the world today. South Africa's 2020 PET recycling rate of 45.7% compared favorably with the OECD countries. The PET recycling economy reported, to have contributed about 2.3% of national GDP in 2020, and it also supports about 60,000 sustainable jobs across South Africa. In fact, more than 500,000 tons of PET, have been recycled in South Africa over a 6-year period between 2015 and 2020. However, the challenge of plastic pollution goes beyond PET or even packaging plastics. All plastics count, whether they are packaging plastics, whether they are plastics for construction, whether they are plastics, for household items. We need to be able to have a process and a system that accounts for all plastics and ensure that they are properly, managed and also fed into the circular tube. A full-scale plastic circular economy will require more broad-based coalition across national and industrial sectors. And each sector has a unique role to play, and then each of their roles then become, mutually reinforcing in a collaborative context, and also helps to deliver the shared goal of a vibrant, sustainable, local plastic economy that supports industry, creates jobs, eliminates pollution, and of course, supports the global, efforts at managing, climate change risks. Another notable example of such, collaboration is the ongoing work by the Multi-Sector National Plastic Action Partnership, the NPAP, in Ghana. And this is jointly led by the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation in Ghana, together with the Global Plastic Action Partnership. The Ghana NPAP is actually developing a groundwork as well as a framework for sustainable management of plastic waste within a circular economic context that has a national scale in the country. Now, this effort will deliver a set of, strategic tools for financing, set of strategic tools, for unlocking the circular economy for plastics. And this will include a national plastic baseline data, an action roadmap, as well as a financing strategy to de-risk the plastic sector and attract investments. A number of sectors, or rather a number of factors, underscore the need for regional collaboration in the fight against plastic pollution. First, plastic pollution is not a local problem, like we all know. Plastic waste travel across boundaries freely through Africa's interconnected water bodies, causing various pollutions before eventually ending up in the oceans. Secondly, the most a compelling reason, like we will appreciate, is the fact that most countries in Africa have microeconomies that cannot support plastic recycling operations. Therefore, Africa needs a regional plastic recycling value chain, that is anchored on a hub and spoke model and enabled by policies and regulations like, regional standards for plastic waste, trade, and recycling. Thirdly, while artisanal or small and medium scale recycling by the informal sector is important for the economy, Africa needs skilled and globally competitive plastic recycling operations to be able to recover and reuse the accumulated stock, as well as the future supply of plastic waste. And lastly, on this point, without effective regional collaboration in these areas, each country will be left to ineffectively grapple with its own increasing pile of waste. And so the summary, the truth is, Africa's plastic pollution challenge is huge. It is beyond the current capacity of the continent to deal with, either at the country level or at the regional level. And in each country, there is no one sector that can deal with this challenge alone. Companies can do what they want to do within their own space. Governments may do what they want to do within their own space. But to be able to create a systemic solution, that can create the quantum change that we all want within the plastic waste pollution space, there needs to be a coming together of all stakeholders, and as we have seen, luckily, there are platforms that are already emerging. And I think this is what needs to be encouraged in the continent. Okay, governments need to make regulations in collaboration with the private sector, in collaboration with the social sector, in collaboration with development partners, so that such regulations can be fair and balanced and be progressive and be able to achieve the objective for which it is aimed to achieve. The private sector itself needs to be part of that conversation. So there is no contention or conflict between the policies that emanate from government and, of course, the sectors that would have to implement or comply by those policies. If we're able to achieve this kind of harmonious working relationship and ensure that, each sector is talking to each sector in the efforts to create a solution for the plastic waste pollution challenge, then, of course, we can begin to make progress. And, in conclusion, whether at industry, at country, or at regional level, the wisdom of multi-stakeholder collaboration in resolving the plastic pollution crisis is actually best summed up in an African proverb, which admonishes us to go far together rather than go fast alone. Thank you.
A very informative video about how to reduce waste pollution. Thank you very much, Clem. Coming up next, we have Gary T, who's a sales director at TIPA. Gary will present the environmental challenges associated with using conventional plastic and how compostable packaging offers as an innovative, sustainable and circular solution for brands and consumers.
Hey everyone, it's Gary here from TIPA. I'm going to be explaining more now about the range of compostable flexible packaging that TIPA offers, looking at some great applications globally where our materials are actually in use, and also looking into the composting process and the way that waste stream would work for compostable flexible packaging. So if we first look at food packaging habits are coming back to haunt us. So what does this mean? Basically, traditional flexible packaging, so the OPPs, the polythenes, the polypropylenes that have been used for the last 30 or so years. Unfortunately, for us, they are just too resilient. They last too long. And unfortunately, that is meaning that they are washing up on beaches, they're being found in open land. And this is obviously terrible news for brands globally. So for them to find their brand in these environments is just not great for brand value, obviously. And it's not great for the planet, let's be honest. I think the other thing that's becoming more apparent is that consumers, the people that are actually buying these brands, are getting more disillusioned by the waste stream that exists today. So if we look at what's been happening to date, so approximately 9% of plastic so far have been recycled, which is a pretty low number, as we all know. Around 12% has been incinerated, and 79% has either been trapped in landfills or lost to the environment. So very much work in progress. If we look at the UK, around 50% of all the products that are in our supermarkets are actually packaged in flexible packaging. It is a runaway success, really, in terms of the pack format. It's lightweight, it does the right job for the product, it protects it, it gives us great shelf life. But unfortunately, once it's been used, it is very, very difficult to dispose of in the right way and recycle in the right way. The recycling rates for the UK are currently around 4%. So real work needed there to improve on that. We know there's a lot of work going on in this sector, but for TIPA, we were founded to find an alternative solution to this type of situation. So the business was founded on a compostable material that was bio-based, that will provide a much simpler solution than traditional recycling, whether that be through mechanical or chemical recycling. So this is what we're trying to emulate, really, which is nature. So nature's done an amazing job, really, protecting products over time. So there's some classic examples out of there, and this is just one of them. The outer packaging obviously protects the product. It gives it the right shelf life that's required. It's easy to open. It looks great. And most importantly, once it's done the job it's designed to do, it'll then return to nature in a timely fashion. And really, that's what the scientists of TIPA have emulated in the products that we offer. So TIPA's products are all designed by ourselves. So the formulations that we use are all TIPA patented. And they are all designed to replicate and replace conventional packaging in use. So if we look at the evolution of plastic end of life, you've got landfill. We've all been used to that for many, many years. Products are trapped in the ground, hopefully, and then stored there over time. This isn't a perfect practice either, as land is used up, and also landfills can breach. We're now seeing examples in the UK of landfills being broken by the sea erosion and content lost to the oceans, which is a terrible story. Then you look at recycling. So recycling is a downward spiral. By that, we mean you cannot indefinitely recycle products. Eventually, they start to lose their integrity and their durability. And eventually, you have to find another use for them at the end of that life, whether that be in landfill, maybe incineration, or really in very, very low-grade products. Composting, on the other hand, is a product that once used, you then put into the composting system. The materials are degraded then through that process, and they're returned to nature in the form of the compost, which is then used by the agricultural world to replace the lost topsoil. The compost that we put back on the soil adds carbon content to the soil, and they become the building blocks then for future plant life. So the soil then becomes very fertile and ideal for growing crops in the future. So a really important part of that circularity. So this is a great example of what we're supplying out into the market. So this is a stand-up pouch, as you can see. If this was a recycled or conventional packaging product, it would be very difficult to recycle. But for TIPA, this is a very simple product to compost. So we've engineered into this material everything that's required for this packaging to compost at the end of its useful life. But what we've also factored into the material is great barrier properties as well. So this particular pack has very good oxygen barrier and very good moisture barrier, so perfect for dried foods. It even has a zipper on there, which is our own formulation, which provides an easy open reclose facility. Again, a compostable zipper. So we've got very high functionality in the product. After use, once it's done its useful purpose in terms of transporting food, we can then return that to nature through the composting process. So here's a great example of our material in use. This is the Waitrose Dutchy banana bag. So the bags are actually packed over in the plantations over in South America. So they effectively become the shipping bag as well. So it removed the requirement for shipping packaging. So once the bags arrive in the UK, they're ripened and then sold in the supermarkets. After use, the bag can then be disposed of through the composting process. Interestingly, Waitrose encourages their customers to use these bags as food caddy liners. So open your food caddy, pop the bag inside there, load that with food, and then when you're ready, the bag can then be put into the organic waste stream through food waste collection. This particular bag, though, I put into a home composting system. So as you can see, after approximately 45 days, I dug the bag out through the process and I had a look at it. And as you can see, the bag has transformed. It started to break down. So the first stage of composting is degradation. And this is where the bonds in our material are fragmented by the action of moisture. And that causes the material to break down and break up into small particles. After those particles break down, it moves on to digestion, which is where the bacteria and the microbes that live within the composting environment digest our material and transform it into CO2, water, and the compost or the biomass that we then use on the fields. So this is a shot here of some windrows. So TEPA has actively gone and approached the UK composting industry, and we work very closely with a number of them. This particular facility is Envars over in Huntingdon. So what you're looking at here is the long windrows where the material is breaking down over time with the action of the organic microbes in that mass digesting and breaking down the material. So Envar is a facility that's the single largest site in the UK. It can process over 130,000 tonnes of material per year. They can and do already accept compostable packaging into this waste stream. They see it as an additional revenue source for those guys, and it is something that they endorse. They do ask that it is industrial compostable as a minimum, which obviously our materials are. So for us, this is a green light really to put our material into this type of facility. There's actually 53 composting facilities across the UK that are licensed to take food waste collection. So therefore, they could also process compostable packaging as part of their waste stream as well. So everything that needs to go into a facility, as I said, should be certified. So all of the materials that TEPA produce have a certification. So there's two classifications. One is home compostable, the other is industrial. Home composting, as it sounds, means that you can process that within the home environment through basically a bin within the garden. So a great first level, if you like, of waste management. The second level is industrial, and this is where we're working with people like Envar, which enables vast tonnages to be then processed in a very efficient way through their composting process. The compost that is generated by Envar is exceptionally valuable to the agricultural world. What's largely misunderstood or not known is that every year we're losing topsoil through farming and erosion. If we don't replace that topsoil, the fields around us become infertile, and we then become more and more reliant on adding artificial additives to the soil to boost it back. So what farmers like to do is to take compost, and they buy thousands of tons a year to replace that, that lost topsoil that they lose through the farming process. So we shouldn't undervalue compost really in terms of the agricultural world. It's also a fantastic means of sequestering carbon within the soil. So the CO2 and the carbon that was within the compost is then trapped within the soil and is a great sink then for the future for bringing down levels of CO2 and carbon in the environment. One of the things that we've also done this year is to get CRAES certification. This is an Irish certification. And what it means is that our materials have been tested in an industrial facility as finished pack formats. So it's the green light then for our materials to then go into Irish composters to ensure that our materials will be processed in a timely fashion for them. It's a really interesting process that they developed in Ireland, and we wait to see whether or not that gets rolled out in other regions around the world. So this is an overview of the process that our materials go through. So as you can see, we start off with a resin. The resin, as I said earlier, is our own formulation and produced to our own patents developed by the scientists over in Israel. We manufacture our materials on polythene extrusion lines. So for us, it was really important to generate a new material that ideally utilized existing equipment around the world. It made it very much easier to scale up as demand increases. So polythene extrusion lines is where it's produced. Chemistry is totally different, I will add to polythene, but we utilize that equipment. Once we've then got the roll stock, it's designed to run on conventional flexo presses, laminators, and also through to conventional packaging machinery. So the material was designed to be as seamless as possible, integrating it into the existing infrastructure for materials. Once the products have then been used, we then go on to the composting phase, as you can see. So stage 1 is that degradation phase as the material breaks down under the presence of moisture. Stage 2 is the digestion phase, which is where we break that material down to create the compost. And the circularity then comes from the compost being put back onto the fields to increase the carbon content in the soil to become then the building blocks for future plant life, bringing us the full circularity. So I've now got some fantastic examples for you of where our materials are actually in use globally. So this is down in South America for Bimbo. This is a bread bag, so it uses our home compostable material TIPA 302. So that's used, as you can see, for a wicketed bag. Then we have the Waitrose Dutchy banana bags, as I've shown you already, some bags in action, so to speak, composting. So this is a brilliant application for our material. It's a nice, lightweight pack format, very, very durable, designed to transport those bananas over long distances and allow them to ripen as normal. And as I said earlier, once used, then return to nature in a timely fashion. Here we've got a more challenging application. So this is oats over in Holland. So this uses a laminate structure. So this particular product requires good moisture and good gas barrier. So this is a special product that we've developed that has the right criteria to do that. This particular bag is industrial compostable. We have just reformulated this material now. We've launched that actually around the 10th of November, that's been launched. And that's now a home compostable structure, which is a really exciting development for TIPA. The French market is very much going home compostable, as is other regions, and certainly the UK is a big fan of home compostable structures. So for us, a fantastic development. And as you can see, this particular pack is packaged on a vertical form fill packing line. So another important aspect for TIPA is that our materials don't slow down the packing process. So we have the right barrier properties to preserve the product, but also the right level of functionality to perform on packaging machines as conventional material does. Here we have an interesting product down in New Zealand. This is a home compostable pack for chickens. This uses our TIPA 302 material. Here we have a high barrier requirement for a T-type product. So this uses a high barrier triple laminate, a product that will be very difficult to recycle, but made from our compostable materials is a very simple product to compost after use. This is for tea. So again, products that need good gas, good moisture, and good light barrier. We can achieve that through adding different layers of materials together to build up the functionality that we need, and always with compostability as the end of life at the end of use. Here we've got some produce. So the characteristics of our monomaterials are that they have good, very high transmission rates to moisture and to gas. And that particularly is beneficial when you're packing products like salad, which during storage will give off moisture as part of that storage process. So that moisture vapor can pass through the surface of our material. And what it does is it actually helps prevent the buildup of condensation, moisture in the bag, which can trigger spoilage. An independent work that's been done using our material has proven that we can get shelf life extensions of up to 50% over conventional plastics. So don't believe that compostable materials automatically generates a loss of barrier. It can enhance the barrier and extend it further. And most importantly, then preventing food waste. Here's a lovely bag for apples down in New Zealand. So organic apples. Organic product, as we know, typically needs to be packaged to isolate it from cross-contamination from other products. So this is a nice home compostable solution. It has a zipper on there to make it easy open and reclose as well. So a very nice product there for New Zealand. And here's some of the brands that we're working with. So we are working with some fantastic retailers globally, as you can see. Some fantastic food brands as well. They're very much leading the market with their desire to move to bio-based and compostable. But we're not limited just to food. We have a large number of clothing brands, that also use TIPA's packaging to give bio-based and compostable solutions as well. So that's the end of the presentation in terms of what we do, how we do it. For us, the end of life really should be through an organic waste stream. It should be separate to recyclable plastics. So there should be a clear point where one material goes in the recycling direction. For us, for TIPA, our compostable packaging should go in that organic direction. That material could then be processed along with food waste and garden waste, and then returned back into the compost that is so valuable to the agricultural world. It brings the circularity back to that process and really completes the that circular story, if you like, of that compostable packaging being used. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary, for this, a brilliant video of how Teapot are tackling waste pollution. We now welcome back Nerida Kelton, who will be talking about circular design.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from around the world. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organisers on behalf of the World Packaging Organisation for inviting me here today to talk about circular and sustainable packaging design. So the World Packaging Organisation has a number of targets for the next 3 years, and they include reducing food waste, reducing packaging waste, and increasing packaging awareness through education. And the WPO targets this by targeting unnecessary packaging, encouraging the phasing out of problematic and single-use packaging materials that are not recyclable, and focusing on the development of monomaterial packaging. So the world is busy at the moment, and it's busy trying to achieve local, regional, global targets. And it doesn't matter whether it's a plastics pact, a plastics-free pledge, an EU plastic strategy, sustainable development goals. Ultimately, we're all trying to lower the environmental impact of packaging that's out there in the world and make sure that all packaging that is available in the world is recyclable and recoverable in the country that it is sold in. And it's a shift from a linear economy to a circular economy. So natural resources are diminishing and pollution is getting worse, and greenhouse gas emissions are worsening. And unfortunately and sadly, oceans and waterways are filling up with packaging waste. And we really do need to stop and redesign and rethink our packaging.
By 2050, there could be more plastic than fish in the oceans. Yet the problems start long before plastic reaches our oceans, rivers and beaches, and so must the solutions. We must tackle this flood at the source. We must eliminate the plastic we don't need. We must innovate, so all the plastic we do need is designed to be safely reused, recycled or composted. And we must circulate everything we use, making sure the plastic we produce stays in the economy and never becomes waste or pollution.
Join our journey.
So what we're talking about is a circular economy, and we're trying to shift the systems, and we're trying to make sure that we're designing out waste and pollution, that we're keeping products and materials in use for as long as possible, and ultimately regenerating natural systems. So the World Packaging Organisation undertakes a series of initiatives, and they are within not only circular and sustainable design, but also food loss and waste and safe food packaging design, because ultimately the environmental impacts of food waste are a conversation that's extremely critical for everyone to have, because we need to minimise food waste and the environmental impact of food waste as well. So the World Packaging Organisation has an annual awards program, a global awards program, and within the World Star Packaging Awards, there is a category, it's a special award category, which is called Sustainable Packaging Design. And what I wanted to do was share with you some of the innovations from around the world so that you can see what companies are actively doing in this space. This is the 2021 World Star Gold winner. And this is Coca-Cola in Australia, and they developed 100% recyclable PCR rPET bottles, and they actually moved most of their SKUs to this range of rPET, PCR rPET, and that's everything from carbonated soft drink bottles, sensitive warm-filled bottles, aseptic bottles, and they have moved everything over to 100% PCR rPET and reduce the use of virgin materials. And they identified that there was a 50% of Coca-Cola's PET tonnage made now in PCR rPET. The gold winner for last year was actually also out of Australia, and it was a small dairy company called Lewis Road Dairy, and they also developed 100% post-consumer recycled milk bottles. And one of the things that they did was they moved their glass bottles to a recycled PET, PCR, rPET, to try and maintain that look and feel of a glass bottle. They reduced the weight. They made sure that it was recyclable and recoverable, and they saved 340 tonnes of virgin plastic by moving to the PCR rPET. The silver winner was a retailer called Woolworths, and they replaced non-recyclable black plastic trays with a renewable pulp-based fibre tray, which was sourced from unbleached bamboo and sugarcane. They have replaced plastic trays over 50 of their bakery products. They 75% of all of the products that were previously packed were entirely in plastic, so they've moved away from that. And they've reduced the plastic in their bakery range by 265 tonnes annually. We then head over to Yassa Packaging in the Netherlands, which is a bag to paper. And this is ideally suited for dry products, particularly things like potatoes, onions, and seeds. It can be closed without sealing. It has a self-adhesive system, and it's suitable for all of the vertical form, fill, and feel systems. The paper is 100% recyclable, and there's no plastic coating. This is the gold winner for 2019 from Finland, and this is a fibre-based food tray. They eliminated no more carton sleeves. They made sure that the tray was recyclable, that it was a fibre-based tray, that the trays were also compatible with automatic packaging processes, and they reduced the plastic in the range by 85%. This is a Coca-Cola company and Indorama Ventures for Simply Beverages range in the USA. And this is a PETG bottle that they moved to a new PET formulation. And it's the first design of its type within this collaborative project. And they enabled the container weight to be reduced by 9%. And it's compatible in a standard PET recycling stream in the USA. So it's recognized by the APR as a recyclable and recoverable material. This is a solution that's come out of Austria from Mondi, and it's a barrier pack recyclable design. And it's also recyclable in the streams that it's sold in, and it's a sustainable alternative for flexible laminates. It's easily openable, it's easily resealable, which adds to consumer convenience, and it's fully recyclable. And it's ideally suited for ice cream, pet food, food and beverage products. This is a new solution that is coming out of Nestle. And one of the things that they did was they did a marketing program where they got rid of the Kit Kat logo that all consumers know and love, and they replaced it with a Mobius loop link. And they also tried to encourage people to understand that this wrapper is a return to store recyclable solution. And the next step that they did with their solution is they're developing a range that is actually using recycled wrappers. So it's going to be a reuse model, circular economy model. So there was two aspects to this program. One was to encourage consumers to understand that soft plastic wrappers are recyclable in the return to store program in the country that it's sold in. And then also the next step is to make sure that Kit Kat wrappers can be recycled over and over again back into more Kit Kat wrappers. So then we move over to Brook Farm, which is a company that's taken an initiative which is called Roll and Recycle, and they're running with it for their business. And it's quite exciting that a company like Brook Farm has decided that not only do they want their soft plastics pouches to be recyclable, but they wanted to be a part of these new trials called Roll and Recycle, where the actual packaging, the pouch, is rolled, and it's recycled through the materials recovery facility and recognised as a plastic bottle. So it stays as a semi-rigid three-dimensional shape in the materials recovery facility, and it enables stand-up pouches that are ultimately currently recycled in return-to-store programs to be recycled potentially through materials recovery facilities. So that allows the consumers to put these packs into their curbside bins, and then they get picked up and collected and recycled through the materials recovery facility. This is an example of a beverage pack that's a little bit different in the category, and it's a certified home compostable film, and it's a certified FSC approved outer to make sure that it's all fully sustainable. They have also ensured that the secondary packaging is FSC recyclable cardboard and certified, and that all of the inks on the packs are non-tax toxic. Another solution is Cove, and they have a refill reuse model that is quite innovative and intuitive that I wanted to share.
Reusable cleaning system designed to reduce waste and lessen the environmental footprint of cleaning across the kitchen, bathroom, and laundry. There are three key components to the Cove system: reusable bottles, refillable pouches, and plant-based ingredients. The aluminium bottles are designed for continued reuse and durability. Cove bottles feature dispenser components that have been live tested to last years, far beyond the lifespan of an ordinary cleaning product. The Cove refill pouches use at least 80% less soft plastic compared to conventional cleaning products. The pouches are compact, recyclable, and made from soft plastic that is readily recyclable through the RedCycle program. The Australasian recycling label and clear on-pack communication effectively guides the consumer how to recycle the pack. The active ingredients in Cove formulations are derived from natural and renewable resources. The Cove refill pouch contains 125 ml of liquid with a high concentration of actives. The consumer simply adds water at home. By creating a reusable bottle as part of the system, Cove completely reconfigures the ongoing purchases. A conventional cleaning product requires the user to repurchase the bottle and trigger dispenser repeatedly, contributing to landfill, whereas a Cove user buys a bottle once and buys the lightweight refill pouch repeatedly instead.
And then I wanted to share with you this fabulous concept from ZeroCo. And what ZeroCo has done is take packaging that is floating in the ocean, so all the ocean plastics that we're all trying to get rid of around the world, and they're repurposing it and recycling it into their dispensers that you can see in this image. They have also taken a lot of plastics, soft plastics that is non-recyclable or going into landfill as well for the pouches, and they've made sure that the pouch spout is easily separable so that you can recycle the soft plastics pouches in the return to store program. And they're trying to eliminate unnecessary single-use packaging, and they've made sure that they've come up with this fantastic reward scheme and incentive program that you can get these free shipping and delivery packs. You can send it off, get it all refilled, and then a new purchase comes through and it's delivered to your door. So it's nice and easy, and the ethos of this company is quite remarkable. Another really innovative solution is a new coffee bag, and it has the barrier of the previous standard coffee packaging, and it is challenging the space of flexible packaging for coffee. This is a recyclable monomaterial with a barrier. It is recyclable and recoverable in the return to store program in the country that it's sold in, and it replaces mixed laminate materials for coffee packaging.
The Melbourne coffee concept evolved from a desire to change the space of flexible packaging and create a monostructure material for coffee. The innovative solution is a recyclable, sustainable solution for coffee that also offers barrier to oxygen and vapour. CyclePack have developed a packaging solution that could change traditional approaches in the coffee industry for good, replacing mixed laminate packaging materials. The packaging is 90% LDPE, has a technical barrier to gas and vapour, a monostructure lamination, BOPE, 7-layer high barrier co-extrusion with EVOH, reverse or surface printed. Developing the sealant layer to hold the release valve internally was essential to the development and required some variance testing. When producing a 90% PE monostructure, the resistance to heat offered by the BOPE was critical to product performance and success. The packaging is entirely recyclable under both the Australasian Recycling Label Program and the UK-based OPRL scheme.
And then we jump into a meat tray, and obviously this is a challenging area all the way around the world, and they wanted to move from a non-recyclable laminated plastic tray to a recyclable, curbside recyclable, FSC certified solution. The new solution now uses 75% less plastic than the meat trays that they had previously had in their range. It eliminates 114 tonnes of plastic from 7 beef cut ranges, and the weight reduction is 9.7 grams per tray, which is 29 tonnes per annum. And it's ultimately approved to be curbside recyclable through the ARL program and the Red Cycle program. This is a salmon solution, and the trays are made from 50% PCR rPET. And they've included a layer of Plantix renewable barrier material to maintain the freshness of the salmon. And during the recycling process, the thin Plantix layer washes away, and it allows the rPET tray to be recycled as a clear PET tray. They have replaced over 15 tonnes of problematic single-use packaging from their range by moving to this new design, and they've reduced the usage of virgin material, and most importantly, it has consumer ARL communication on pack, and it's curbside recyclable. Another area that many people don't consider is secondary and tertiary packaging, and I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea on other solutions that are out there that are trying to make more sustainable solutions. And this is one from Omni Group, and it's Ventex Unico, and it's a 100 recyclable 15 film, and it's dispensed through ropers, reducing stretch wrap by over 50%, and it requires fewer wrapping rotations, and it decreases pallet wrapping costs by half. And here is a little video just to show you a little bit more about the Omni Ventex.
Ventex Unico stretch wrap is 100% recyclable, and the 15 film can be dispensed through the Unico ropers, reducing stretch wrap usage by over 50%. The solution requires fewer wrapping rotations and significantly decreases pallet wrapping costs by halving film usage. The Unico film allows air to flow freely through the pallet and allows loads to breathe. The stretch wrap increases load ventilation to help prevent moisture buildup so that the goods can remain fresh and condensation free, therefore extending shelf life and reducing damaged produce. The solution reduces chill room electricity costs, allowing air to flow through the pallet, cooling the load faster. Therefore, temperatures are not required to be as low. Unico film is ideally suited for wrapping loads that require fast cooling, aeration, and controlled temperatures. The solution is perfect for wrapping loads of fresh produce that are likely to get damaged by ripening gases, humidity, and mould.
And the last one that I wanted to show you was another consideration for your outers. And this is about eliminating unnecessary single-use packaging, eliminating polystyrene, EPS, and trying to make sure that what you're packing your products in is more sustainable. So a more recyclable solution, renewable, biodegradable. And basically what this is cardboard and corrugate that you potentially are already using in your warehouses and distribution centres. It gets put through a machine that you can actually have in your DC, and then you can use that as your padding and protection to wrap your products and transport them. And then it's obviously curbside recyclable, FSC certified, so it ticks all of the boxes for sustainable design. So when you are considering circular and sustainable design, it's really important that you look at using your materials for longer, using them again and again and again, making sure that it's clean, and using less of your materials wherever possible. Rethinking, redesigning, reducing, reusing and recycling your packaging is where we have to be now. And I would encourage all of you to look at solutions that are more sustainable and that can ultimately lower the environmental impact of your packaging. And I'll leave you with one last video that I think has a really fantastic message.
Plastics are all around us. We all benefit from them. They help make our cars lighter, protect our food and insulate our homes. As we use plastics in more and more ways, we're also creating more. But did you know that just 14% of global plastic packaging is recycled? All the rest, worth $80 to $120 billion every year, is lost after just one short use. And that nearly a third of all plastic packaging leaks into ecosystems where it can stay around for hundreds of years. This means that by 2050, there could be more plastics than fish in the sea. The new plastics economy aims to drive a movement towards a system that works, transforming the current take, make, dispose economy into one where plastics are designed to be used over and over again. To do that, we're bringing together leading organisations, experts and entrepreneurs from across the world to innovate, collaborate and rethink the way we produce, use and recover plastics. We know it's possible. Join us in creating an effective system that works for everyone. Visit newplasticseconomy.org to learn more and see who's already involved.
So thank you very much for the opportunity just to show you a few of the innovations that are being designed around the world for sustainable packaging. I would encourage all of you to keep an eye out for the World Star Packaging winners for the next upcoming year. And should you have any questions or need any additional information, please reach out to myself or anyone within the World Packaging Organisation, as we're always here to help you. So thank you once again to the organisers, and please stay safe. Thank you.
To conclude our conference, we now have Winfried Muehling, General Manager of ProCarton, and René Eckhart, Senior Scientist at Graz University of Technology, explaining how cartonboard can be recycled at least 25 times.
Thank you very much. Today, for a short call, we will have with Dr. René Eckhart. Dr. René Eckhart, he is at the Institute of Bio-Based Products and Paper Technology of the Technical University in Graz. We will discuss the topic of recycling of fiber-based packaging material. Fiber-based packaging material has a recycling rate of 85%. It is one of the highest recycling rates that is out for any packaging material in the market. Recycling, as we know, has a very positive impact on the eco-balance of a packaging system. The more recycling loops we get done, the more positive impact on the environment. And exactly here it comes in that it's important to understand whether or how is the impact on the fiber quality with repeated cycles. For this, we made a study with TU Graz, and I would just like Dr. Eckhart, in a very few words, what are the key takeaways of the study of TU Graz, and what do the results show?
Okay, yeah, what we did is we tried to do the recycling process in a way that we kind of keep any fiber material within our system. So we used a lab sheet former, and we tried to avoid any losses in fiber material to make sure that whatever goes in is going to be used in the paper again. And we did 25 cycles, and along these 25 cycles, we did a lot of tests on the material. We looked especially on the swelling behavior of the fibers, as we do know that this is going to be affected through the drying processes. And we did a lot of mechanical tests, and we were looking for the mechanical development of the fiber material, or the development of the mechanical properties in terms of strength and stuff like that, and also on the swelling behavior. And we did see a slight development in swelling as we expected in the very beginning. So we did see that the swelling did decrease a little bit, but not very much, as it is already recycled material that we started out with. So you would expect it in the very beginning that the swelling is going down a little bit from the virgin fiber. And as we already started with recycled material, there was not much of an effect. And when it comes to the mechanical properties, we hardly saw any effect at all. But one has to mention that the re-slushing of the fiber material, it affects the material. So we did produce a little bit of more fine stuff in the fiber material, and this fine stuff will probably compensate some of a possible loss in the mechanical properties. But over these 25 cycles, it almost kept its mechanical properties constant, with the possibility that the production of fine material compensates the loss. So it's kind of maybe two effects that are overlaying each other, but it pretty much stayed constant.
Okay, that's a very interesting figure. I recall from previous discussions, there was always a discussion of 5 to 7. Can we now say that 25, that is a figure we can use going forward?
Well, I wouldn't even say that 25 is the limit. In my opinion, the limit is set more through your stock preparation processes and the way you have to clean the recycled fiber material to get the stock prepared for the headbox and for the paper production. And there you will always have losses. You will lose some material in your slushing process and through the rejects you have and through stock preparation. So this is more or less the limiting factor, and not so much the fiber material and how often you can do this reslushing and drying, because in this respect I didn't see why it shouldn't go on like that after 25 cycles. So the limitation is not in the possibility to reslush and to make paper out of the fiber. I think this is not a limit at all.
It's a very encouraging result that came out of your study. Now let me just ask a final question. The necessity of fresh fiber in the recycling process as part of the cartonboard production. How do you look at fresh fibers?
I think it depends on the properties you're expecting from your product. When it comes to certain brightness that you might want to achieve, maybe in a top layer, or when it comes to special mechanical properties, they might not be achievable with your recycled fiber material. Then you will need some virgin pulp that really helps you to get the properties you need. But if your recycled fiber satisfies your product needs, then there is no need for virgin fiber. It depends on the properties you're expecting from your product, actually. And you will have to make up for the losses you have in the recycled fiber material in the end. So some fresh fiber will have to go into the cycle overall to compensate for any losses with the rejects. But other than that, yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. René Eckert from the Institute for Bio-Based Products and Paper Technology, Technical University of Graz. Thank you very much for sharing these very encouraging results with us. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank all the speakers for their insights into circular economy. Our conference has been a great success, and thank you so much for contributing to this. Our next conference is on recyclable packaging and is being held on the 19th of May 2022. I would also like to thank all of you who have come to our website to listen to our conference. We hope you have found it interesting, and we look forward to seeing you at our next one.